by Black Cat Comics in Rock and Milpitas, your one-stop shop for all things superhero. Shop online at black-cat-comics.com. We're here to keep you connected to the comic book community. I'm Mark.
I'm Francie.
And our special guest today is local artist, Magic the Gathering artist, independent comic creator Josh Frankel.
Woohoo!
But first, we always like to talk a little bit about new comics and some comic shop news. Going to open today, unfortunately, as we have a few times recently, with the loss of one of the all-time comic greats. We lost Jolton Joe Sinnott this week at the spry young age of 93. Much like our friend Mick Gray, Joe Sinnott is one of the all-time great inkers of comics. We all know his work from working with Jack Kirby on Fantastic Four and so many other things. Rest in peace to Joe Sinnott. Again, one of the all-time greats. Google him. Check out the Comic Book Hall of Fame because I'm sure he's in there. All of his work is well worth checking out and well worth giving a minute of your time. And then moving on to some books for the week. Lots of great books. As always, lots of big things going on in comics this week. We usually start with our one-stop shop for all things superhero sort of thing, but I see the one at the top of your stack there. Why don't you talk a little bit about that one?
Well, actually, you're the one that told me about this. So it's Sleeping Beauties. It's a small press book. It's actually inspired by Stephen King and his son Owen. So it's a retelling of I think a short story that they worked on together. And it's pretty gory. Let's see, what can I actually show on screen?
The letters page?
Maybe just the first page. Yeah, the first page I think is, well, not really. I can't show you any of it. But it's great. So I'm excited to see what this is all about, and this just came out this week.
IDW doing some great stuff, and all a lot of fans really need to hear is Stephen King, and then
that's it. Yeah.
And that's worth your $3.99, right? I got an opportunity to pick up an Avengers book for the first time in a long time. Empire Avengers #0, cool Iron Man cover there. First issue of the next big Marvel event. Like I say, just haven't had an Avengers book to talk about in a while. Everybody knows that's my favorite A-Team, my favorite comic, and so I was super jazzed to get that. And a lot goes on in this book. If you read Incoming, if you've been following Fantastic Four, some different things. But you don't have to have known anything. You can just jump right into this one. Like I say, a lot going on in the Marvel Universe, and just fun to pick up again another Avengers book for the first time in a while.
You know, I don't need to tell you to read Batman, but I mean, just look at that cover.
Or this one.
Isn't that great? I mean, that cover is just wow. I can't just wait to see. I haven't read it yet. I can't wait to see the Harley / Punchline mashup. We had a good intro to that in '92, and now '93. We're gonna actually duke it up.
Let me say to that point really quickly as I flip around. I know 99% of you are already reading Batman, but maybe you didn't pick up Secret Files #3 because folks pass up on the Secret Files, the specials, the annuals sometimes. You Batman fans need to pick up Batman Secret Files #3. There's a bit of a Joker War prequel story in that one that I think a lot of you missed. And to the three of you not reading Batman right now, number 92 and number 93 that we just showed you. Pick up 92, pick up 93. If for some reason you weren't following the Tom King run, now's a great time to jump back into the Bat stuff. And this is your last warning before number 94 sells out. I'm going to tell you that right now. 94 is going to be one of those books that we all ordered way too many copies of, but they'll disappear and you will end up getting a second printing. So buy number 92 and 93 and the Secret Files and get ready for 94, the big Joker War one.
Yes. Oh, I mean, come on. Well, this is last week.
That's last week, but still
in my box. Still in my box. I haven't read it yet. Oh no, I did read it. Man, these weeks have just been flying by. So Monstrous, another one of my favorites. If you haven't read Monstrous, pick it up. You will enjoy it. It's an amazing fantasy, kick-ass. The art is just amazing. And then, of course, Once and Future.
Give everybody a little premise on Once and Future for the folks who don't know what's up with that.
It's basically modern day hunt for King Arthur, Excalibur, Knights, the Round Table, but in a weird, horrific, I'm going to kill you like Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of way.
There you go.
Yeah.
I like kill you in a Buffy the Vampire Slayer kind of way. I want to mention real quick, just because you threw them out there, I'm always very Marvel DC, but you got an IDW book there, you got a Boom Studios book there, you
I like
got
to mix
an
it up.
Image book here. I mentioned in the video that it's super true. Monstrous will change your life. If you read the first issue, if you buy the first trade, that will become a book that is immediately on your list. I mentioned those indies because I wanted to throw out there SOS, support our shops, from Aftershock. Aftershock put this together as a sort of a charitable thing for comic shops, sort of a thing that we can all sell and put a couple bucks in the till. And so they're helping us, so I'm helping them. I talk about Aftershock in the Wednesday videos every week because they produce great stuff. Again, I know we're always saying we're your one-stop shop for all things superhero. But going along with our special guest, Josh Frankel, I'm adding a little independent emphasis this week. And Aftershock is really awesome. Check out Dark Art, check out a lot of things that they do. But pick up, support our shops. Because it's a bunch of cool little stories, a little anthology from creators telling stories about buying comics and about buying comics in comic shops, and so that's a lot of fun. And lastly, from me, though never lastly, because there's always new books, is the big 80th anniversary for Green Lantern. Again, talked about this in the video, I know, but pick up all of these 80th anniversaries. They're a little pricey, but they're super sized with some of the best talent in comics, doing lots of different stories. This is your Jim Lee cover. There's lots of different covers, one for each decade, of course. The 80 years of Green Lantern. Though I have to be a bit of a stickler and point out, it's not Hal Jordan's 80th anniversary, just the 80th anniversary of the concept of Green Lantern, as opposed to Batman, Catwoman, Joker, who are actually originally 80 years old, but everybody knows, Golden Age Green Lantern and Silver Age are not the same. But a great book, and pick them up. Buy two. Buy the awesome cover, and then buy one for a reader copy. That's my spiel for new comic news.
You're going to need to stretch it just a little bit. We're waiting for our guests to log back in.
Oh, all right. Well, like I say, there's always other new books to talk about. I can come back here and talk about Marvel Snapshots Captain America, because I never miss an opportunity to talk about Captain America.
Human cat.
I've loved these snapshot books. This gives me a chance to talk about Captain America, but also a little bit about Marvel history, Marvel events. All these different snapshots are sort of news stories that take place back in old events. If you're old school like me, you remember the Mad Bomb series from the 70s. And it was Kirby's return to Marvel after his stint at DC, when he went into Demon and Mr. Miracle and New Gods and all that great stuff. He came back to Marvel and came back to Captain America right around issue 200 for the Mad Bomb story. And coincidentally, that's where I came into comics, is at number 202. So I'm very partial to that particular run. I'm very partial to Captain America. And like I say, I love these snapshots. So just check out that awesome cover. Worth $3.99 just for that awesome cover. I say not too many Marvel books this week, but lots of great things to talk about. And while we're waiting,
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Woohoo!
All right. Then
Drum roll.
drum roll, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome independent comic artist and member of the Black Cat family, Josh Frankel. And the crowd goes wild. Welcome, Josh.
He's getting his camera all situated.
There he is.
All right. Gonna unmute
From his
there.
sanctum sanctorum, his inner artist
Yay.
office.
What's up, Josh?
Folks at home, this is an interactive program, so feel free to throw those questions, comments, and we will satisfy your curiosities to the best of our ability.
Hey guys,
Welcome, Josh. Thanks for joining us.
thanks for having me. Does everything look okay? I had to do it a kind of weird way.
I think
Yes.
we see you, we hear you, and you look fantastic.
We've had technical difficulties every week. We've had a guest, so we're 3 for 3 now.
So I like you start these things, tell the nice folks at home who you are, what you do, what you sell, and where they can buy it.
Okay. So my name is Josh Frankel, and I am a longtime friend of Francie and Mark and Black Cat. And I'm also a cartoonist and illustrator, although I'm not like a big pro, I just have to say, and also a freelance writer. But so I do my own independent comics. Yes, many years ago, I designed the logo for Black Cat Comics.
Right.
So
Infamous logo.
I've done a bunch of independent comics over the years, and I'll show you my most recent one is this. It's a black and white magazine-sized book called Eccentric Orbits. That's a science fiction. Let me see if I can get it on camera good. It's a sort of a science fiction story about some kids who live in a orbital community where there aren't really kids. Kids are sort of an obsolete concept in this science fiction reality. So they're real outsiders who have to figure out how to make a go of it out there. So this is something I make, and I actually just finished this. I just had this printed like about a month ago. So was a quarantine publication.
Where can folks find that?
They can find that on my website or my web store, which is jfnexus.storenvy.com.
Do you want to send us down some? We can add them to our store too.
I'll do that. I know I'm gonna come down there for to pick up my order, so I will hand some off to you.
So Josh and I go way back. We met in 1997 at a little company called Wired Digital. It was the online version of Hot Wired, the Wired magazine at the time. And
Yes, the big .com boom.
The .com boom. We were part of the .com boom in downtown San Francisco, right by the ballpark.
Yep. And we were there for a couple years, and then we both left for a startup, and Mark worked there too.
Yes, that's right. And so nextplanetover.com was a online comic store started by a couple of guys with an idea, and they were basically the online store for Diamond distributors, which made a lot of retailers kind of upset. But that only lasted like less than a year, wasn't it? Or maybe
yeah, but there's like a month or two period where every Marvel and DC book had terrible ads from nextplanetover.com. So you still see those from time to time if you have any comics in your collection from like, I don't know, the tail end of 1999 maybe.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes. And that was the first time I worked Comic-Con. I think the first and only time I worked at Comic-Con was when NPO had us give out graffiti t-shirts for free with no marketing, no branding for Next Plan Over, just random shirts. So people would come in and get a shirt and walk away and do what we did.
I think weren't they supposed to try to use the website? Didn't we have some like stupid goals for them to do on the website? But it's not really the environment for that kind of thing. People just want to get their swag.
Yeah.
We did have some signings. We had some good signings in the booth.
We had Neil Gaiman.
Yeah.
I have a picture.
I worked security for that.
Yeah, I me too. I stood behind him like he didn't even know I was like, yeah, that's pretty awesome.
I had actually worked briefly at Comic-Con, at San Diego Comic-Con, a few years earlier. 96 was the first time I went, and I volunteered for Comic-Con to get a badge.
Nice.
You could do that back then. I used to encourage people to do that. Oh, don't buy a ticket, just go down there and volunteer.
That's where we started going too, was 96.
And I was going to cut you off during the intro when you said that you weren't a big comic book star, because I think your Comic-Con experience, at the very least, begs to differ that point. How many times have you set up at Comic-Con and worked your booth and been a Comic-Con vendor?
I think I probably did like 8 to 10 years in there. I lost track of exactly how much, but yeah, for a while, like I would always team up with various buddies, and we would get tables in the small press area to sell our goodies, like comic books, but also T-shirts and other stuff like that.
Well,
It was always a good time.
anyone that works Comic-Con multiple years is a true comic professional. Anyone can do it once, but someone that has the nerve or the insanity to go back and do it again, that's commitment to comics. Right there.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of a grind, but it's also really fun.
Michael wants to know if you can say your website again.
Yeah, so my name is Josh Frankel, so it's my initials JF Nexus NEXUS .storenvy.com.
And we'll post that later too on the feed as well.
Or if you want, I can do a screen share and show it.
Yeah, let's see it. Let's see it.
Would that be some good tech? Let's see. Let me try it out.
He thought, besides Josh being an awesome artist and an amazing guy, as you guys know, he did our logo too. And we were just talking about how timeless and perfect it is. It's been 18 years now, and that logo is still just, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hold on. I can reenact it.
Yeah.
Oh. Rad.
There you go.
Here we go.
Live.
Nicely done.
This is my own black cat, Iggy.
Love it.
Pet
Love
action.
it.
That's awesome.
Okay. Yeah. So,
Yeah,
you want me to screen share real quick and take you on a tour of what I've...
Let's see it.
Okay. Share screen.
Yes, sorry, Dark Comics. The video part of it is only on the Facebook thing.
We will post it after the fact.
You can rewatch it and catch Josh's handsome face and take the posting.
Nice.
But for the
There it
YouTube
is.
folks with the live part, it's only audio.
So I don't know if the URL is visible.
It is. Yep. Perfect.
Okay, cool. So that's it. And right now I only have 6 comics for sale on my store, but this is kind of a good sample of what I do. So these are all self-published. I'm like a real small press zine making kind of guy.
Can you talk about your zoological comics? Because I find those fascinating. I think it's some of your best work.
Thanks. And here I can click over to them. Yeah. So for a while I was doing wordless comics about marine biology. That was a big interest of mine and an emphasis. So like this is a comic book water column. This issue is all about plankton basically, and it's and then the series progresses up the food chain to large basking sharks, and then in the 3rd issue, spoilers, the 3rd issue starts with the shark being dead, and it shows how a large animal like that decomposes and feeds the food chain.
Where's the seafood one?
It's not currently in print. I did that comic. What's the copyright on that?
Let's take a
Yeah,
look.
that's a rare copy.
Woo-hoo! 2004.
Wow, old school.
Yeah, and that's a silk screened cover, so I hand pulled every cover. So yeah, that's a real old school thing, and that was when I would be exhibiting at. Am I on screen again?
You need to turn your video back on, but yeah, we can hear you.
Zoop.
There you are.
Sorry, I'm using a browser I don't normally use. Yeah, that's back when I was exhibiting at the Alternative Press Expo in San Francisco at the time was when I published that. So that was a small press show that was annual that was in the Bay Area in various locations for a long time and was actually owned by Comic-Con International, but is no longer.
That was towards the end though, wasn't it? Kind of an independent slave labor
Yeah,
graphics.
Yeah, for the first few years, it started in San Jose, and it was started by Slave Labor Graphics. Then sort of it wasn't towards the end. It was like for most of the time that Ape was in existence, it was part of Comic-Con. And then I think for the last couple, it might have reverted back to slave labor. but I don't think it's happening anymore.
No.
Well, I love your comics because uh, it's two things. One, I mean, just a great example of artistic skill, and it's a two. It's just a unique comic experience. It's some of what makes it's some of the art that gets lost in. I love superhero comics and everything that goes along with it. But sometimes in the spectacle of superhero comics, you lose the concept of sequential art and storytelling. And your stuff does such a great job of storytelling with sequential art. And as somebody who loves watching Superman fight robots, I love when I can read a comic and like enjoy learning something. And so even if we weren't friends, I would say, wow, this guy Frankel, this stuff's really awesome.
And
Yeah,
was that stuff inspired by your work at UC Berkeley, or was it parallel, or was it before or after?
that was actually it was sort of in parallel. Like Francie's talking about, I worked in the Museum of Paleontology at UC Berkeley for a long time, and I was working in a public education group, so we would make science and evolution education materials for K-12 classes. Um, but actually, a big inspiration for doing those marine biology comics was the Blue Planet series from the BBC. Those shows, which kind of at the time, what I haven't had like a real focus in comics, honestly. Like I've popped around and done all kinds of different stuff. And so at the time, what I really wanted to do was do a comic that just like had a real kind of beautiful look to it without word balloons cluttering up the page. Like I just wanted something that had like a real illustration quality that was attractive. And that subject matter of the ocean was so interesting to me from the TV show. So I was like, well, maybe this can be done in an interesting way as a comic that would also um, add something to people's uh, interest in the subject. So
Yeah.
that was what I was thinking at the time.
And I think they're great educational tools, to trying to teach kids about the food chain and ecology and ocean life. I think they're great for that. So anyone out there
Thanks.
that's got little ones that are fascinated with the ocean, you should get these comics for them. Well, not this one, but you can get this one. Some of the other
Yeah,
ones too.
yeah, and all of the books I do, those are wordless. So there's, which I think is kind of cool, a cool challenge doing comics without words. But I also have supplementary material in the back I have like some writing about like what took place in the comic in case people wanted to find out what was going on there.
Yeah. And just answering a question here, the cat that you just showed is a brand new baby cat. He's only what, 6 months old or so?
Oh, and he's a little older than that. He's probably like a year and a half.
He's so tiny.
He's really small. He's like I think he probably now weighs about 8 pounds. Um, he was he's a stray that we adopted, and I don't think he ate very much like in the first year of his life. So I don't know if that has something to do with his
Sure.
smallness, but
Yeah.
he was a stray in the neighborhood, and he was really he had basically like every kind of infection and parasite when we took him in, but now he's doing good.
Good.
There you go.
He's got a forever home now. So the
Mhm.
the answer to the question that was asked by Jelani is that that's not the original cat for the logo, because that logo
No.
is 18 years old.
Right.
18.
Right, and that was a cat named Agnes, right? You have a black cat named Agnes?
We
Yes,
did,
she
yeah.
was the original black cat.
Yeah.
Long time ago.
We still got black cats.
Yes, we do.
We've got
yes,
a Lois
we do.
and a Chloe right now, black cat, and then a tuxedo cat named that.
Um,
Mixing it up, black and white.
Mhm.
do you have a question, or can I throw the question?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I always like to ask the artists, and because I always get asked so many questions about getting into comics and this and that and the other. Take either or both of these. At what point do you realize, at what point are you in your life when you realize I'm a real artist, I can do this for realsies? And or secondly, how does one what am I trying to say? How does one push themselves or perhaps their artistically inclined child to pursue their talent?
Those are great questions, and I have to say, in preparation for this interview, I watched last week's where you talked to Emo, and that was last week, right?
Yep.
And he was so impressive and had such like mature, just excellent attitudes about art. So I kind of want to just refer people to your YouTube channel to go back and watch the emo one to get like a real artist's take on things. But I'll give you my answer too. So I very recently probably realized that I was even though I've been doing this for a long time, I've never been that confident with my art. I don't have a like a, I wasn't like particularly encouraged as a child to do art. I didn't go to art school. So it's been a real evolution for me, like coming to realize like this is something to be serious about. This isn't, you know, like it's arguable whether I do comics as a hobby or whether I'm serious about it. But I think it's, you know, one thing that really helped was meeting other artists and seeing people who did take it seriously, who were very you know, had confidence in their work and thought that it mattered. uh and I mean, for like I can tell you, like, I drew comics from a very young age, like just as a, amusement for myself, just you know, during classes on the backs of assignments type thing. But it was always sort of just like, here's a silly thing I do. It wasn't something that I was like, this is my identity, this is who I am. So that's been a more slow evolution for me. I know I really envy people who have like an innate sense of like self-confidence and understand like that they have a purpose and stuff, but that's definitely not me. Like it's been a slow road, and like, but I think I'm in a good place like now where I really like have a good sense of like where art fits into my life. And then, in terms of what I would tell children now is just just do it. Just make stuff, whatever you want. Don't worry about rules. Don't worry if you have the right kind of pen. You don't, there is no right kind of pen. Um, just get your reps in, express whatever you want and get it out there, show it to people. Like Emo said, showing it to people is a very important thing, and I agree. But really, like, doing the work is the most important thing, which is like a real kind of salt of the earth thing to say. But yeah, like that's like I don't have a publisher, right? Like all these comics that we've shown so far are things that I made at a copy shop, and it's that easy. Like, and they could be garbage, but I think they're not, and I've given them to enough people who seem to appreciate them that I know that it's not that's not the case. So that's kind of what I love about comics in a lot of ways. Like, I mean, I like a lot of the stuff that you like too, Mark. I've come to appreciate a lot of like, superheroes fighting robots type comics, but I think my first like what I love about comics is that anybody can do them. Like you don't need a cameraman and a director and a writer, and it's not like this whole team. Any one person can sit down and do a comic, and you can also publish it yourself, right? Like all you need to do is run it off and hand it to somebody.
Very punk rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely into like the DIY zine kind of thing, and that's kind of like there was a period of time when I was like a little less into comics and a little kind of disenchanted with the scene. Like I think anytime when you're in a scene, you kind of get a little disenchanted. And what's really inspired me and brought me back to it was the DIY nature of it, and the fact that there's just like total artistic freedom, and um, you know there's not a lot riding on it. The stakes are very low also, which takes some of the pressure off.
Emo is watching. He said thank you for your kind words. And he said
I did a signing at your store with Emo whenever that was, like 15 years ago. It was a long time ago.
It was for our 5th anniversary, so that would have been 13 years ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were both, I guess, 13 years younger, and I don't know how mature I was, but I'm glad you're watching Emo, and I can tell you that I thought all of your answers last week were just perfect.
He said that when he saw your work, it reminded him of Dark Horse's Age of Reptiles by Ricardo Delgado.
Mm-hmm.
I love that book. That's a great book.
Yeah, that's high praise. That is a great book.
Yeah, I mean, there are, I'm trying to think of there have been, like, in recent years also a lot more kind of science comics, educational comics, as like graphic novels have become like a much bigger segment of the book market.
Yeah.
But yeah, Ricardo Delgado's been doing it for a long time.
So over the years, so Josh lives in the Berkeley, Richmond area and has for many years. And you've been a part of a pretty, as you said, DIY. Do it yourself. Don't do it. Yeah, that's right. DIY group of artists in that area for years and years and years. So tell us a little bit about that community, because there's not a lot of, aside from Emo, there's not a lot of small press guys down here. You guys actually get together on a regular basis and you share and you create. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed over the years. Like, so I, moved back to the East Bay probably around 2000, I guess. And there were some people I'd been in touch with online. We were trading comics with each other. And someone invited me out to a bar and they were like, we're going to do comics jams. And so we would, like, sit around a table at a bar and, someone would draw one panel and then someone else would draw the next panel and like collaborate like that. And yeah, there was a really vibrant group of people in the East Bay at that time who were all doing self-published comics. It was kind of before the graphic novel boom happened, so the stakes were really low. Like, comics were still kind of like garbage to everyone. So I mean, not us, but not you guys, but in the larger culture. And so, we would go to small press shows, we would do those hangout things. And yeah, that was really crucial for my growth as a cartoonist, just because that's where I met a lot of people. And there are a lot of people who have gone on to much greater success from there too.
That's what I was going to say. It wasn't a lot of them went on to do image work. And who's the guy that we both know? I can't remember. He actually won an Eisner.
Jason Shiga?
That's it.
Yeah, Jason Shiga, who I still see every week. Who has Jason Shiga's a genius, and he's had books published by like some of the big, New York publishers. Yeah, now it was a really vibrant scene back when we were like kids. Now, unfortunately, as it's become more expensive to live in the Bay Area, like a lot kind of moved away. It's become harder for artists to pay rent around here. And then also the boom in cartoons, like with Cartoon Network and Adult Swim and all that stuff, has attracted a lot of people down to LA, where a lot of the people that I knew from that scene are working on, Adventure Time and Regular Show and stuff like that. So
great. And then you got your podcast that you do. You still connect with your friends through that?
Yeah, so I'm glad you mentioned that. I do a podcast called the Comics Claptrap with my friends Tin Pham and Rina Ayuyang, who are both amazing cartoonists as well. And it's actually something that we started a long time ago. Like, we might have been doing Comic Claptrap for like maybe 10 years, honestly, but it was really sporadic. But during the pandemic time, when everybody's on Zoom like this, we decided to like give it another go again and actually start putting it on YouTube also, on video. So what it is me and Rena and Tin just get together and talk about comic stuff, but most of the time we're interviewing another cartoonist that we talked to. So like a good example actually for what we were talking about before, Jean Luen Yang, who is a massive award-winning young adult cartoonist who also has done Superman work. Like he recently wrote that
The Klan
yeah, Superman Smashes the
And then-
Klan,
and New Superman.
Superman, yeah.
yeah, so he was actually one of us in that little scene, that little DIY scene back in the day. And I was actually in a critique group. You know, we had a critique group where we would each have to draw every week and bring in what we'd done that week, and everybody would look at it and give comments on it. And what Gene was drawing at the time was a book called American Born Chinese, which went on to be compiled and published by First Second Books, and it won a national, and he was nominated for a National Book Award. So Gene's big time, and he's great. Like his books are amazing. I don't know. Do you guys have Dragon Hoops in the store? It's his new graphic novel.
He's local, and he like literally lives and has kids in Milpitas, and we've tried to get him to come here for a signing.
Oh, is he big timing you?
Yeah, totally. We can't
Sorry.
get through to him directly, so maybe now we can network through you because we have to go through anyway. Yes.
I can
Time.
I can possibly help you out with that. We'll see. I don't want to promise anything for Gene. Like, dude is super busy.
I can't
but
get past his agent, so you've got to do better than me.
yeah, he actually was a teacher at Bishop O'Dowd High School in Oakland for a long time. Yeah, even while he was while he published American Born Chinese. So his latest book, Dragon Hoops, is about the Bishop O'Dowd High School championship basketball team.
No
like
way.
the season that they went really far, and which sounds like, am I that interested in high school basketball? I don't know, but it's actually brilliant. Like he talks about like all the like the history of the sport. He talks about the racial dynamics. He talks about how hard it is for student athletes. He talks about all these pressures on these kids and the coaches and everything. So I highly recommend Dragon Hoops. And anyway, he was our first guest on the comics Claptrap.
Awesome.
So
Where did the name come from?
the name, I really don't remember. It came from a long time ago, and I would probably choose a different name now if I could. It's Comics Claptrap, and comics is spelled Comix with an X.
Ooh, fancy.
So yeah, not great. But if anybody wants to see it, they can search Comics Claptrap with an X on YouTube or on iTunes.
We can put it on the feed afterwards too. So
Yeah,
speaking of basketball, enlighten us with your whole Yahoo Sports stuff that you did for a while.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Come on, dude, that's huge.
Yeah. No, I worked with another artist. I actually wrote a comic strip for Yahoo Sports's NBA blog for a while. Like was kind of one of those things where another cartoonist and me were both realizing that we liked basketball, and we were like, well, maybe we can monetize this time a little bit by making a comic strip for Yahoo Sports. So that was something we did for the Ball Don't Lie blog. We had a comic strip called Garbage Time All Stars.
Nice. And it got picked up by Yahoo News, right? You did it first and then they saw it and bought it, or how did that work?
Yeah. I mean, we started it just as like a fan blog, but the goal was to try and get someone to publish it. And at that time, that was like a time when blogging was still kind of new. It's so weird how old I sound and how old this stuff sounds, but like blogging was new. There weren't any sports blogs. So when there were finally sports blogs, it was only like, 10 people in that scene. So if you met one of them and they got a job at Yahoo Sports, then they could pick you up. So that's kind of what happened.
How long did that last?
I think we were on there for like a little more than a season before we it wasn't that long, and it was more just our collaboration. Like we got kind of tired of doing that thing. It wasn't making us a ton of money either, but it was cool to do. And I did a lot of basketball art after that too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then I kind of transitioned my fan art stuff to Magic the Gathering.
That's my next segue.
Right, which is a game that I've played since I was, since it started, because I'm so old. And and so I did fan art and comics for that for a while, and I ended up being hired by Wizards of the Coast to do comic strips for their website as well.
That's awesome.
And
How
that
did they find you? How did you get connected to Wizards of the Coast?
actually at Comic-Con, I I mean, actually, so I this is another example of like finding a little scene that hasn't really taken off yet. So like there were some Magic fan websites at that point that I started that, but it wasn't, huge. So just by putting stuff up, putting my work out there, I was able to meet a lot of people online, including I got attention from the creative people at Wizards of the Coast. And then going to Comic-Con, I would, be like, "Hey, I'm that annoying guy that talks to you online, and you've seen my art." And they'd be like, "Oh yeah, yeah, yeah." So yeah, that's how I met people. And also going to Magic tournaments, I would meet some of the people who worked at the company there. And so
That's sort
actually,
of,
what's that?
that's sort of why I asked, because it just sort of underscores some of the things you talked about earlier. Always like putting it out there into the universe. Like I say, I get asked all the time. I have the world's greatest idea. What do I do with it? And I'm like, well, you got to get out there. You gotta talk to people. You gotta get online. You got to go to the shows. You got to meet people, talk to people. You got to show people your
Yeah,
work.
but number one, don't wait.
Yep.
Like just do the thing. Like make the thing, because if you wait for somebody to need it for you to make it, it's like so unlikely to happen, and you'll get tired of waiting. And so for all these projects with the basketball, the Magic, it was just something that I had enthusiasm for, and I put out there before I knew anybody. I didn't know anybody in either of those scenes before I started doing the work. I put it out there, and then I tried not to be a jerk, which is always a plus. It's amazing how far that'll get you, not being a jerk.
Amen, brother. Amen. That's true. So what's the
Some people
magic
never
card?
get that lesson.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
So
true. Or
yeah,
they get
so
to the
like
point
just
where they're so
just by
full
kind
they
of
feel that way.
just by sticking it out there and meeting people and you know pitching stuff too. Like once they knew me, then I felt like I could email them, not every day, don't be annoying about it, but email them and say, "Hey, if you're looking for some stuff for your website, I do these comic strips. People seem to like them. Might be a good match." Yeah.
Do you is there a particular magic card that the collectors can go find and have that Josh Frankel magic card?
Oh, well, so yeah, so we didn't talk about this. So that was what I talked about just now was I did comic strips for their website. So which was like jokes about magic cards. Um, but that I kind of parlayed that into writing for them. So I'm in the I do some freelance card naming and flavor text writing for Wizards of the Coast. So I do writing for Magic cards. So which is very collaborative. It's not credited on the cards, for the artists, but it's uh it's something that my experience I think kind of uniquely suits me for, which I like. And uh it's a fun creative collaboration that pays some of my bills.
And it's a little NDA, like you're not allowed to talk about specifics, right? So like you can't tell us what cards you've worked on.
I mean, I can tell you some cards that I've worked on, although honestly, how it usually works is I'm working on the cards like a long time before they even come out. And by the time they come out, I don't exactly remember which parts I contributed and which I didn't. But I mean, like every once in a while, I'll see a card and be like, "Oh yeah, that I did that." And like I used to keep better track of it, but I've worked on like 20 different Magic sets at this point, and
Oh
so
my
it's a
god.
little bit So yeah, like I worked on uh Ikoria, Lair of the Behemoths, which is like the set before this most recent one. So
Cool.
I'm trying to think of I don't remember a particular card from that though. It's very collaborative, and like my fingerprints are kind of all over the text, I can tell you, but I don't really point to like that's me, that's what I did.
So now that you're kind of on their payroll, can you not do tournaments?
There's rules about what tournaments I can and can't do,
Mhm.
which doesn't affect me that much since I wasn't really getting out to tournaments much anyway, and now nobody is.
Yeah, right. We've got a couple of questions, a couple of comments. So Jelani said that she's reading Dragon Hoops to her 5-year-old son, and it's really good. So that's great. Emo asks, can you talk about your comic process now versus when you first started?
Sure. Let's see. And I have to say that it still changes like from project to project, um which I like because it keeps it fresh and interesting for me. Like one thing that I often do is between projects, I'll be like, I think I want to draw bigger, or I think I want to draw smaller, so my originals will be like bigger or smaller depending on like what the last thing I did. Um, I think when I was like a little kid, my process was just like whatever home to the paper. And then I think when I first started out, trying to, as an adult, make comics, I agonized a lot over it. Like, I think I tried to plan a ton of stuff, and I still do this sometimes, but I think I was, I was very worried about, um, getting everything perfect. And I think that, and a lot of artists will say this, is like there's often like you get kind of a stiffness and like a deadness to your work if you are making it, or are so worried about getting it perfect and revising and revising and revising, you kind of revise the life out of it sometimes.
Yeah.
So these days I'm more loose. I try and draw faster. I try and be more improvisational. Also, I just am like not I think some people are very well suited to doing like very neat, well-defined drawing, whereas I am definitely like a sort of a scratchy, messy kind of artist. And so I think over time I learned to play to that my true nature a bit more, as opposed to trying to fight it. Like instead of like being like, oh, I don't like how my comics look, I'm so messy, like I got to try and make them neat, which that is one way to progress, that might work for some people, that might work. But like what I would find a lot of times is it would end up being just like highlighting the conflict between my messy nature and me trying to be neat, and it would just look like, it would look like a rat wearing a business suit kind of thing. So whereas when I try and when I be like, okay, I draw messy, how can that be good? Like what do I like about other people's drawings who draw messy? Like a lot of my favorite artists are people who have like very kind of scratchy kind of drawing. So
Richard Sala.
Richard Sala, or just like somebody even like Ralph Steadman, or Eddie Campbell.
Yep.
Trying to think of like Joan Sfar, who's a French cartoonist whose work I really love. So
well, and it's important to stay true to who you are. And I think too many young artists try to copy people that they like. And it's fine to be inspired, I think, especially when you're starting out, to maybe try with Stanley Lau, the art term guy, or try with, J. Scott Campbell or the Dodsons or whatever. But it's really important as an artist, whether you're a writer or you draw or you're a cartoonist, to find your own style. And that's got to be almost a lifelong process, I would think.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it works for everyone. I think it's like I really hesitate to give artistic advice too, like because it's so different for everyone. And I kind of hate when somebody's like, this is what you must do, this is the way to do it. Because for a lot of people it's not the right way, and it might end up stunting their growth because they feel like, this is the one way to do it and I can't do it that way. I guess I'm not an artist.
Right.
So
I think
yeah,
that
like I think it's really hard. Like a lot of young artists struggle with what you just talked about, like finding their style. And I think part of the reason is because it has to be sort of I think usually it's kind of a natural process. Like it's very hard to contrive your style. It just has to come out eventually.
Yeah.
I think that was Image's biggest contribution to comics. I've said for a long time that before Image, you worked at Marvel if you could draw like Kirby, and you worked at DC if you could draw like Hubert, and there were very, very few exceptions to that.
Right.
And then Image comes along, and you see this just massive
Totally
explosion,
yeah.
and then that stuff sold, and the big two were sort of forced into this position of like, hey, let's not have a house style, let's open this thing up.
Right.
And then at least that's my feeling, that then in the 90s you see a real proliferation in the mainstream of all of that kind of thing, and I think it's really benefited comics.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you on Image and that contribution, and I think you know, it just it's Marvel and DC ultimately are two big conservative corporations, and you know, time and again, someone will come in who does something like different, and they by accident often get hired, or they start one way and then they get a little more idiosyncratic, and a lot of times they end up being like a super popular artist, but it's not the nature of things. Like I've just been reading the New Mutants run that Sienkiewicz draws, and it's like that's so idiosyncratic compared to like what the Marvel House style is, and especially you look at other stuff that Sienkiewicz did like Elektra Assassin, and that book was very popular. I guess I don't know how well it sold, but I imagine since it's still in print these many years later, people must have liked it.
Yep.
But I don't think he had the easiest. If he just like showed up as a new like a kid with Elektra Assassin to the Marvel Comics offices, they probably would have been like,
Pass. So, Emo wants to know: are you doing any commissions of painting on existing Magic cards?
I don't do that, but I know like I'm that is a big scene, the altar scene. So I assume that's what Emo's asking about. Like I'm not much of a painter, honestly, and but like I'm friends with a guy named Eric Klug, who I don't have his website or handle at hand, but he's another artist who lives in the Bay Area, and he's like one of the top altar guys, and his stuff is just amazing.
Awesome.
Eric Klug, Klug. Look him up.
So what are you reading these days? What's turning you on? What do you listen to while you're working?
I'm reading all kinds of stuff, you guys. Like I have gotten so into comics lately, like more so than for a while. Like I'm reading stuff all up and down the spectrum, stuff that's good, stuff that's bad, and like I'm learning to like appreciate stuff that's bad and like still get something out of it. I'm looking at a lot of like older mainstream comic stuff that I just like. I didn't come to comics via like superhero and mainstream comics, so it wasn't really a big part of my consciousness, but I'm going back and looking at a lot of stuff. Like I just showed Mark before we started the stream. Like I just read this Where Creatures Roam from Marvel, which is like a 70s horror reprint of Golden Age stuff. And I don't know, like this is just so exciting looking to me. Like I look at this cover and I'm like, that is so cool and weird. And the stories are so dumb. Like some of and the first story in here is a Ditko story, and it's like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever read, but I love it. It's like it's interesting to look at. There's stuff there, so I'm I've got all these I've been reading a lot of like old Kirby stuff lately. These 2001 is a great series.
Yes, it is.
I read Dragon Hoops. I already mentioned is great. I still read tons of like I'm reading a lot of black and white indie stuff from the 80s, like which was like some of the most garbagey comics there are, but I really appreciate the enthusiasm they brought. Like in the wake of the Ninja Turtles, like everybody was like, we're the next Ninja Turtles, like we can do that too. And it was like, that really opened the door for a lot of people to publish. They're like, what? We can make a black and white comic and people will read it, and we can print it ourselves and sell it. And so there was this profusion of stuff, and most of it is not very good, but there's a lot of enthusiasm there, which I like.
Yeah. And Jelani had asked about publisher. So you've self-published all of your stuff. So you are your own publisher.
All of those books that I showed, I mean, I've done I haven't really had a lot of publisher relations. Like like you said, I was published by Yahoo Sports. I've been published by Wizards of the Coast for comic strips. And I've done pieces in like anthologies and stuff with publishers, but yeah, for the most part, self-published.
Ema wanted to know also, what are some of the things you have done to help yourself improve as an artist?
I think it really pays for me to like step back when I'm done with a project and evaluate it, like really look at the pages and be like, what worked here, what didn't work here, and be like honest with myself. Sometimes it's a little hard when you're in the middle of a project, but at the end, I just finished that book and I wrote a list of like things I want to do differently next time. Like where it's like, I want to improve my lettering, or I want to, try this technique. So that's one thing. And then also, this is an old piece of advice for sure, but just, draw a lot. That helps.
Just keep doing it.
And also like kind of what I said before, read a lot too. Read a lot of diverse work, and as you're reading it, try and see like, what are they doing here that works, what doesn't work, where is this failing, and how can I avoid that, stuff like that.
And am I remembering this right? Didn't you teach a decal class at Cal on Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics? Didn't you teach a class on comics?
I did teach a class at Cal when I was still a student at Cal. Like you mentioned, they have this program where any student can teach a class on a subject. And I didn't know what I was doing though. Like I have to say, like that was kind of foisted upon me because I took that class. There's a catalog, and I was. What's that?
Didn't we take it together? Because we took that class before, and then you taught it after.
Well, I didn't. I think you took it the semester before I took it.
Okay.
I think it had been around for a little while. I didn't know you at Cal.
That's true.
Yeah. But the semester that I took that class, Jason Shiga was in my class, and also Adrian Tomine, who's a cartoonist. And so I took that class, and then what happened was the teacher was going abroad for what he actually was studying, and he needed someone to take the class over. So I took the class over for him, but I didn't know what I was doing. I just threw together a reading list, and we were like, I guess we're reading comics, guys, and we're talking about it, but I wouldn't recommend my own class.
Yeah, but I'm sure you looking at it from a teacher's perspective, you look at comics maybe with a more critical eye and try to go a little bit deeper than just
Sure.
taking a couple of seconds to look at a page. Like you really study it and you try to understand, what were they trying to do here? What's the significance of this panel format, and why did they put the words there instead of here, and layouts and things?
Oh, for sure. That was like that was kind of like at the point when I started thinking about those things more, just in terms of like storytelling technique and drawing technique and that kind of thing. So you're right. Kids have a lot more resources these days.
Yes.
Back then, like now there's like whole colleges that teach like cartooning and stuff. Like back then it was like,
yeah. Mick Gray,
fend for ourselves.
We had Mick Gray a couple weeks ago, and he's teaching an inking class at the Academy of Arts College in San Francisco. What was the class you took? I missed that. Oh, Michael, it was a decal class. So at Cal, it was a student-led class, and it was called something like Understanding Comics or something like that.
And so you took it also, right?
Yeah. We did it. He kind of sat in there with me, even though he wasn't going to Cal.
Oh.
And we collaborated on a comic for that class.
Cool.
Yeah, we did a lot of work with Scott McCloud. They went in and that was like the curriculum was reading his Understanding Comics, and that was hugely influential and mind-blowing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't agree with every single thing that McLeod says in
Yeah.
understanding comics, but it's a real eye opener if you've just never thought of comics that way before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As a reader, you just think that people just put stuff on a page, but you don't realize that there's a lot of thought that goes into layout and pacing and what you exaggerate and what you minimize and having a mood. It's almost like you're a director in a movie.
Right.
You've got to have a flow to it, and it's a lot more complicated than it looks.
Yeah, comic books are such.
What's that, Josh?
I was just gonna say comics are such a like magical thing, like you've got this like rectangle in front of you that has little smaller rectangles maybe, and there's like lines on it and ink and junk, and it's like that somehow just sparks your imagination, right? Like there's all this like stuff going on between the reader and the page, and so like because there's this weird magic happening, it's worth studying.
We've got just a couple more.
Josh, what was the name of the graphic novel you just finished? Dark Comics over here on YouTube was asking about the book you just finished.
Reading
Did I?
No, the one you're creating, the one that
Oh, it's called Eccentric Orbits.
Eccentric
and
Orbits.
It's available on my website.
Probably just finished. You can see it again on the rewatch. It's
40 pages, magazine sized.
40 pages, magazine size, black and white.
Awesome.
Black and white, yes.
Science fiction.
Right, and my publisher is Copy World.
AKA Kinko's.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Yes, we are going to get some of those down here and we'll put them on our Shopify store. So we will finagle that with Josh so that you guys can get, you can go directly with Josh. But if you want to do it with your weekly pickup, we'll ask him to send us down some and you can get them from us as well.
Yeah.
So another thing I asked Emo last week, if Marvel or DC called and offered you a mainstream project
or Image,
but I'm going for that more. I like to ask the indie guys, what's the Superman, Spider-Man book that you would do for one of the big two?
I think I would probably have to choose like one of the real peripheral characters that I can't imagine taking over like one of those big tentpole kind of characters where there's like 100 years of writing already behind it. So something like some obscure character, like I was just reading The Demon, Jack Kirby's The Demon, that has a Clarion the Witch Boy.
Oh yeah.
Who I believe has shown up in some stuff since those comics, but something like that, something obscure. Clarion the Witch Boy is my answer.
Nice. That's a good answer. He was in the Justice League animated cartoon.
That's right, yes. Is he too played out, or is there still room there to...
Oh.
It's only like 2 episodes, but yeah, no, he's a great character. Little punk.
He's got a good look. I don't know much about the character, but he's got a cool look and he's got a pet cat, which I like.
Also true.
Okay, last question, and then you can share whatever you'd like to share at the end. What are 3 books or one that inspired you to start making comics?
What inspired me to start making comics? I think, okay, I'll give a few. So definitely comic strips were a big inspiration. So things like Calvin and Hobbes and The Far Side were like big inspirations when I was a kid. And then Mad Magazine was a huge inspiration for me so this is right, like I said, I didn't really come in through superhero comics. These are the things that I was reading more. So I would get every issue of Mad that I could, and that was like amazing to me. Like it was a real like interesting variety of art and disrespectful, and so that was a big inspiration. And then when when comic books really like became more of a like actual comic books became more of my reading, there's this comic book called Boris the Bear, which was one of the first Dark Horse books. It was like in the initial slate of Dark Horse books, and it was sort of like a Ninja Turtles parody sort of comic. it wasn't really a parody, but it was about this little robotic bear character that was violent, and they would like from issue to issue do parodies of other comic books and stuff. And I'm not saying that everybody should run out and read Boris the Bear, but that was sort of like, and a friend of mine had all of the Boris the Bears, was a big issue part of it. So I was over at his house and I was like, what are these? And just reading those kind of like was a good segue from the like Mad magazine into comic books. And then probably the next comic book that I really read was GI Joe, which was Marvel Comics GI Joe, written by Larry Hama, who I think is a great and underappreciated Marvel Comics writer. And you know, for a comic book about a toy, did a pretty good job with it, and created quite an amazing series. So those aren't, I wouldn't say any of those, I wouldn't list any of those as my favorite comics now, but those were what got me in.
I think if somebody picked up the a trade paperback of that original GI Joe stuff, there's a lot of, like we've talked about, maybe not great comics, but things about great comics. There's great art in those books. There's great storytelling, great use of the medium, I guess is what I'm saying. You could see where it would be inspirational to a young artist.
There was really good storytelling, I would say. Like I think that someone could definitely like learn something by reading those, just in terms of like, because there was a real continuity to it, but not in a baffling way like a lot of comics with continuity can be.
Sure. Well, like I say, it's a toy line, and he managed to give them all personalities and character and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it was a unique writing exercise, because Hasbro would come to him and be like, all right, you have to introduce 25 new characters. Kind of weird.
Oh. Great. Is there anything else that you want to share, you want to talk about, you want to mention before we wrap it up?
I guess not. Thanks for having me, guys. I always love to see you. I don't get down to Milpitas often, and I wish I saw you more often.
Yeah, ditto. Well, at least we can do it through Zoom during these times.
Yeah, I'm willing to come back, talk more. I have plenty of time.
That'd be great. Yeah, maybe we can join you on your podcast at some point.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's probably the thing. If I was going to promote something here to sign off here, I would say check out Comics Claptrap, Comics COMIX Claptrap on YouTube. You'll be able to tell if it's for you pretty quickly, I think. So low risk, like, but I think we're a fun bunch of hosts, and we have some interesting topics. And then I don't know, you can look at my Instagram if you want to see my art, and like that's probably the easiest way to get like links to my stuff. So my Instagram is JF himself.
Right. Okay. We'll post all that stuff on the feed after this.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us, Josh. So it's great to see you. Great to talk to you.
Another member of the Black Cat family here, Josh Frankel.
Thank you for the awesome logo that we use and will always use.
Meow.
Thanks for joining us, sir. We'll see you again soon.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
And folks at home, that about wraps us up for another episode of Comic Shop Talk Live. We hope you enjoyed another episode. Thank you for joining us. You can find us next Wednesday with the new Comic Live video. Join us again next Saturday for another episode. And tune in tomorrow, Sunday, 2 p.m., Facebook Live. We've got a special live sporting event coming at you tomorrow. Something new, fun, and exciting Sunday, 2 p.m. Don't miss out. Go to black-cat-comics.com. Thanks for your support. Thanks for watching.
Bye, guys. See you next week.